You now have a scenario where a country which voted against Brexit, as you outlined earlier, is now witnessing the rise in support of Nigel Farage's party. You are pretty scathing about Nigel Farage in this book. Tell me what you say about him.
And this is my impression. Other people might have a different view of him. He just comes across as somebody who's got a very, very fragile ego, somebody who's not particularly comfortable, particularly around women.
I mean, you call him odious.
In the 2015 leaders debate, just before we went on air that night, I just remember hearing him tell somebody how much he'd had to drink in the green rooms beforehand, and it just felt this kind of bravado and just not very pleasant. But, you know, that's my impression.
You introduced legislation which fundamentally would make it easier for people to self-identify their gender instead of going down the medical route. You fought for that legislation, tooth and nail. Why did this matter to you so much? People look at it and they say, why did she choose this as the political hill to die on?
Just to pause and remember that when this was first mooted, it was not the divisive, toxic, controversial issue it became. Trans people have always existed. They are amongst the most discriminated against and stigmatised groups in our society. And people can chuck as much hate and hostility at me on this issue as they choose.
But the bottom line was that debate became so toxic. How does it sit with you, such a passionate believer in this, that you may actually have made things worse for the lives of transgender people in Scotland?
No trans person has ever come to me and said, I really wish you hadn't tried to make life better. We really regret how it's all unfolded. I didn't, I think, anticipate as much as I should or engage as much as I should on some of the concerns that might then be triggered. At the point I knew it was becoming, or felt it becoming as polarised, I should have. I think I say in the book, I wonder if I should have. I'm going to say it categorically. I should have said, right, okay, let's pause. Let's take a step back. And because I fervently believe that the rights of women and the interests of trans people are not irreconcilable at all. I should have taken a step back and said, how do we achieve this in a way that...
So you're basically admitting that you should have just paused that legislation,
yeah.
That you became unstuck over the questions about the transgender prisoner, the rapist, Isla Bryson. Why couldn't you answer that question?
I think I was caught up in the...
Will you answer it now, whether you believe Isla Bryson
Isla Bryson identified as a woman. I think what I would say now is anybody who commits the most heinous male crime against women probably forfeits the right to be, you know, the gender of their choice.
They forfeit to be the gender of their choice. That's quite... I mean, this actually goes to the heart of the difficulty around this.
That probably was not the best phrase to use, but
they forfeit their right to be the gender of their choice.
If you rape a woman, then I think you probably, the debate about whether they should be called a woman or not, probably.
Well, why don't you simply say then Isla Bryson is a biological male?
They are a biological male, but that's about whether it gets back into the self-ID thing. I should have been much more straightforward. I wasn't. But that's because of the debate. We'd lost all sense of rationality in this debate. I'm partly responsible for that.
The reason I asked it is because the point you specifically make about it in the book is that this was a place where my acknowledged communication skills deserted me. And you say I lost the dressing room.
Yeah, I totally did. And that was my failure. Anything I say about Isla Bryson in the wider world will immediately be taken and transferred to every trans person. And if I sometimes still seem as if I'm struggling with how to define Isla Bryson, it's not out of any concern for Isla Bryson, it's out of concern for how that then affects the wider trans community. And that is difficult.
Alex.